The human vet had seen many unusual cases on Earth, from exotic animals with strange injuries to rare creatures rescued from harsh conditions. But nothing could have prepared them for what lay ahead. One quiet evening, while reviewing notes in their small clinic, an unexpected communication arrived. The message was not from any Earth-based organization. It came through a channel that seemed almost impossible, with signs that matched none of the known human technologies. The message was simple but shocking, an invitation to a distant galactic colony to help an alien species with a wolf that had been declared sterile. The vet's heart raced as they reread the message. The colony was thousands of light years away, a place humans had never visited. And yet, there it was, a plea for help. What made it even stranger was the tone of the aliens, respectful but urgent, almost desperate. They claimed to have exhausted all their advanced technologies, yet the wolf remained unable to reproduce. To any human, this sounded incredible, almost like science fiction. But the vet had always been driven by curiosity and a sense of responsibility. If there was even a small chance to help, they felt compelled to try. Preparations were unlike anything the vet had ever undertaken. Earth-based equipment had to be modified for interstellar travel, and the human had to study alien medical protocols that seemed complex and precise. The ship that arrived to pick them up was sleek and silent, its design unlike any aircraft seen. On Earth, boarding it felt like stepping into another world. The walls seemed to shimmer with faint light, and soft hums filled the air, as if the ship itself was alive. Despite the awe-inspiring technology, the human focused on the task ahead, saving the wolf's ability to have pups. When the vet finally arrived at the colony, the scene was both beautiful and unnerving. Towering crystalline structures reflected, colors that changed with every angle, and the alien inhabitants moved gracefully, almost floating. Among them was the wolf. At first glance, it was intimidating, far larger than any wolf from Earth, with fur that glimmered in shades no human could name. Its eyes were intelligent, sharp, and wary, observing every movement with suspicion. Yet, beneath the surface, the vet sensed distress, a silent plea that only a careful observer could detect. The aliens explained their predicament in detail. They had tried every known method to encourage the wolf to reproduce. Their technologies could monitor hormone levels, stimulate reproduction at a cellular level, and even simulate environmental conditions from the wolf's natural habitat. Yet nothing worked. The wolf had grown increasingly aggressive, lashing out at anyone who approached. Attempts at feeding and bonding had failed, and the creature had become isolated, confined to a large enclosure that was more like a holding pen than a natural space. The aliens themselves were puzzled and frustrated. They had assumed that, with all their intelligence and science, they could solve any problem. Yet here, their knowledge was useless. The vet spent hours observing the wolf, noting subtle signs that the aliens had overlooked. Its posture suggested fear, not aggression. It flinched when any sudden movement occurred, and seemed to watch the human with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Unlike Earth wolves, which rely heavily on pack structure, this creature appeared to crave understanding and patience more than anything else. The vet realized that perhaps the key to helping it was not advanced technology, but something more fundamental: empathy and trust. Over the next few days, the vet began a careful routine. They started by simply sitting near the wolf, speaking softly, allowing the creature to become familiar with their presence. Slowly, the wolf began to respond, lowering its body slightly in a gesture that seemed almost like a nod of acknowledgement. Food was introduced as a tool of trust, not just nutrition. The vet noticed the wolf had preferences that went beyond simple sustenance. Certain textures and flavors seemed to soothe it, while others caused agitation. By adjusting the diet, the Human was able to create moments of calm, small victories that encouraged the wolf to engage rather than retreat. The aliens watched with a mix of skepticism and amazement. Their advanced instruments could measure every physical parameter, yet they could not account for the subtle changes in behavior. Each day, the wolf grew slightly less tense, showing small signs of curiosity. It would tilt its head when the human spoke, observe their hands during preparation of meals, and even approach a little closer than the day before. The vet took careful notes, knowing that these small gestures were critical. To an outsider, it might have seemed slow or even trivial, but the human understood that trust, once earned, could open doors that technology alone could not. The vet also introduced enrichment activities, things designed to stimulate both mind and body. Puzzle, feeders, objects that could be manipulated, and safe spaces for exploration were created within the enclosure. The wolf initially ignored them, but gradually it began to interact, showing sparks of curiosity that had been absent before. The vet watched with quiet satisfaction. This was not just about reproduction. It was about restoring a sense of agency and well-being to a creature that had been misunderstood. Each interaction strengthened the bond, each small success reinforcing the possibility that life could be nurtured, even here in this alien environment. As the days passed, the vet began to feel a profound connection with the wolf. There were moments when the wolf would approach without fear, its massive head lowered in a gesture of tentative trust. The human would extend a hand, feeling the warmth and the subtle rhythm of its breathing. It was a fragile relationship, built on patience and respect, but it was real. The aliens began to whisper among themselves, astonished by what they were witnessing. Their instruments had shown no reason for hope, yet here, with simple human care, progress was visible. One night, after weeks of observation, the vet sat alone with the wolf. The colony was quiet, the strange light of alien skies casting a calm glow. The wolf rested its head near the vet's lap, eyes half closed in a rare moment of relaxation. The human gently stroked its fur, feeling the soft undulations beneath. Their fingers. For the first time, it seemed that the wolf was no longer just a subject of study or a problem to solve. It was a living, thinking being, capable of forming bonds, of understanding kindness. And in that moment, the vet knew that the path ahead, though uncertain, held real hope. The message had said the wolf was sterile. The aliens had declared it beyond help. But the human vet realized that this was not a failure of biology, but a failure of connection. The wolf's body could produce life, but its spirit had been trapped in fear and misunderstanding. With careful, patient care, the human could guide it back to a state where it could thrive. And so, under the shimmering skies of a distant galaxy, the vet prepared for the next phase of their work, an effort not just of medicine, but of trust, empathy, and understanding that could change the course of this wolf's life forever. The end of the first part of this journey, the wolf was no longer the same creature the aliens had feared. It had begun to respond, to acknowledge, to show small signs of hope. And the human vet, standing quietly at the edge of the enclosure, knew that the greatest challenges were not the distance traveled or the alien technologies encountered, but the delicate, patient work of building trust, one small, meaningful moment at a time. After weeks of careful observation and gentle interaction, the human vet had finally earned a small measure of trust from the wolf. The creature, massive and imposing, now allowed the vet to approach without showing fear. Its eyes, once sharp and suspicious, sometimes followed the vet with a quiet curiosity. The alien caretakers, who had once scoffed at the idea of human methods, watched in silent astonishment. Their instruments could record every heartbeat and measure every hormone level, but none of their data could explain why the wolf had begun to change. The aliens whispered among themselves, their disbelief barely contained. As the human continued working with patience and care, the vet knew that understanding the wolf went beyond biology. The wolf's behavior hinted at deep-seated stress and perhaps even loneliness. Unlike Earth wolves, which thrived in packs, this alien wolf had no companions. It had been bred in isolation, studied as a specimen, and its instincts to trust or bond had been suppressed by its environment. The human recognized that to help the wolf fully, they had to create not just physical comfort, but emotional safety. They began spending long hours simply being present, sitting quietly while the wolf explored its enclosure, offering soft words and gentle gestures, and slowly introducing textures, toys, and objects that could stimulate curiosity without overwhelming. At first, the wolf ignored everything the vet presented. A puzzle feeder, designed to reward the wolf with small portions of food if it solved simple tasks, sat untouched for days. But the human remained patient, resisting the urge to intervene. Too quickly. Slowly, tiny signs of interest appeared. A paw would nudge a toy, a nose would twitch as it sniffed at new textures, and one evening, the wolf even pressed its head gently against the vet's hand. A fleeting moment, but one of enormous significance. The aliens could not understand why these small interactions mattered, but the human knew. Trust was being built, and trust was the foundation of life. Food became another tool of connection. The wolf had grown accustomed to the alien diet, which was precise and carefully controlled, yet lacked variation or stimulation. The vet introduced flavors and textures reminiscent of earth food, subtle enough to intrigue without alarming the wolf. Gradually, it began to eat from the human's hand, a sign that it was starting to associate their presence with safety and comfort rather than threat or control. Each meal became a quiet ritual, a bridge between species and a step toward healing. More than just the body, the aliens struggled to watch this human approach. Their systems could measure every cellular change, monitor every hormone, and calculate countless probabilities. Yet they had overlooked something so basic the wolf needed: emotional connection. It was a lesson in humility. The vet did not correct their disbelief, but allowed the wolf to demonstrate the results. Slowly, even the aliens began to notice the difference. The wolf was calmer, less prone to sudden aggression, and more willing to interact with its environment. One morning, the vet noticed something remarkable. The wolf, which had never sought attention before, approached them while they were arranging the enrichment area. Its ears twitched in a manner that suggested recognition, and its eyes, dark and intelligent, seemed to hold a spark of trust. The human reached out slowly, letting the wolf choose whether to respond. For several moments, nothing happened, and then the wolf rested its massive head on the human's knee. The vet felt a shiver of triumph. This was no longer a mere animal responding to instinct. It was a sentient being acknowledging care, forming a bond that would be crucial for the next stages of recovery. The aliens, who had always relied on efficiency and precision, began asking questions. How had the human achieved what they could not? They studied the vet's methods, observing how calm speech, steady movement, and patient repetition could influence behavior. Slowly, they began to appreciate the subtle power of empathy, a force beyond the reach of any machine. The human explained that the wolf's reproductive issues were not just physical, but psychological. Stress and isolation had likely disrupted natural cycles. By creating an environment of trust, the wolf's body could begin functioning as it was designed to. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between the human and the wolf strengthened. The creature began exploring more confidently, playing with objects that once frightened it, and even showing brief flashes of what could be interpreted as affection. The vet kept careful notes, recording behaviors that hinted at readiness for the next step, preparing the wolf for reproduction. They knew that the process would require both patience and precision. Any sudden stress could undo all the progress. Made to further prepare, the vet designed a series of exercises that combined mental stimulation with gentle physical guidance. The wolf had to navigate small obstacles, manipulate objects to receive food, and practice movements that would later support pregnancy. It was not training in the strict sense, but rather preparation for a healthy, balanced life. The wolf responded, gradually learning to trust that every interaction was safe, and that the human was an ally rather than a threat. One evening, the vet sat quietly beside the wolf, watching the alien sky turn shades of deep blue and violet. The wolf rested its head on their lap, and for the first time, the human allowed themselves to reflect on the journey so far. It had been challenging, exhausting, and emotionally taxing, but every small victory mattered. The wolf had begun to show signs of relaxation, curiosity, and connection, things the aliens had assumed were impossible. It was a living reminder that science alone, no matter how advanced, could never replace understanding, patience, and empathy. The following morning, a small breakthrough occurred. The wolf approached the vet without hesitation and allowed them to examine its body more closely. Vital signs were steady, muscles were healthy, and most importantly, the wolf displayed no fear or aggression. The human realized that the next step, encouraging reproductive readiness, could begin. This was delicate work. Unlike Earth wolves, the alien wolf's physiology was unfamiliar, and the vet had to rely on careful observation and intuition. To proceed, the aliens were anxious, but willing to follow the human's guidance. Realizing that their own methods had reached a limit, the vet began introducing subtle environmental changes. Lighting, temperature, and daily routines were adjusted to mimic conditions that might naturally stimulate reproduction. The wolf responded positively, showing curiosity and calm rather than fear. Each small change was monitored carefully, ensuring that the animal remained comfortable and stress-free. The human spoke softly, sometimes simply narrating their actions, sometimes offering quiet reassurance. The wolf seemed to understand, responding with movements and gestures that indicated trust and recognition. By the end of part 2, the wolf had transformed from a creature labeled sterile and hopeless into a being capable of responding to care, showing trust, and interacting with its environment. The aliens, who had once declared failure, now watched in wonder. The human vet had demonstrated that empathy, patience, and careful observation could achieve what even the most advanced technology could not. The stage was now set for the next step, guiding the wolf through the miraculous process of life, something that until now had seemed impossible. The human vet realized that this journey was more than a scientific mission. It was a lesson in humility, compassion, and understanding, the true nature of living beings. The wolf, once feared and misunderstood, was now on the path to recovery, and the human felt a profound sense of responsibility. Every small interaction, every moment of patience, had contributed to this transformation. And as the alien colony observed quietly, the vet prepared for the next phase, knowing that the most challenging and rewarding work lay ahead, helping this magnificent creature bring new life into the galaxy. By now, the human vet and the wolf had developed a unique rhythm. Days were no longer filled with uncertainty and fear, but with small moments of connection that steadily strengthened trust. The wolf, once wild and unpredictable, had begun to respond to the human's presence with curiosity and even cautious comfort. It would approach when called, sniff at objects placed in the enclosure, and occasionally sit nearby during the vet's daily routines. For the first time, the wolf seemed to understand that not all beings were a threat, that someone genuinely wanted its well-being, and that perhaps life could be gentle, as well as harsh. The alien caretakers watched every interaction with a mix of skepticism and awe. Their instruments could record every movement, every heartbeat, and every hormone fluctuation. But they could not explain why the wolf, which had been declared sterile and beyond help, was now showing signs of calm and engagement. The vet's methods relied not on technology, but on understanding a simple, patient approach that had unlocked something the aliens could not measure: trust. The next stage was delicate and required careful observation. The vet needed to prepare the wolf physically and mentally for the possibility of reproduction. This was not as simple as adjusting diets or monitoring health metrics. The wolf's body was capable of producing life, but its mind had been shaped by fear, isolation, and stress. The human knew that forcing the issue would be disastrous. Instead, the focus was on creating an environment that encouraged natural instincts to emerge, where the wolf could feel secure enough to let its body respond in its own time. The vet began subtle environmental adjustments. Light cycles were shifted to match conditions the wolf might have experienced in its natural alien habitat. Temperature and airflow were modified to create comfort zones. Small objects and textures were introduced throughout the enclosure to stimulate curiosity and movement. Every change was designed not to overwhelm the wolf, but to encourage exploration and engagement. It was a slow process, requiring constant attention and adjustments based on the wolf's reactions. Food continued to play a key role. The vet experimented with new textures and flavors, observing which combinations sparked interest and which caused agitation. Meals became more than sustenance. They were a tool for bonding, a way to show the wolf that interaction could be safe and even rewarding. Gradually, the wolf began to approach the vet during feeding times without hesitation, sometimes resting its massive head nearby, occasionally nudging the human's hand as if asking for reassurance. Every small gesture was a victory, every moment of trust a step closer to success. During this time, the vet also spent hours observing the wolf's natural behaviors. Movement patterns, sleeping habits, and vocalizations were all carefully recorded. The wolf had moments of play, pawing at objects or chasing shadows, showing bursts of energy and curiosity. Other times it would withdraw, lying quietly in a corner of the enclosure, seemingly lost in thought. The vet understood that these periods of rest were just as important as activity. They indicated the wolf's comfort level and readiness for the next stages of care. The aliens began to learn from the humans' patience. Initially, they had focused entirely on measurable results: hormone levels, reproductive scans, and advanced diagnostics. Now they watched as subtle cues, tail flicks, ear movements, eye expressions became the key indicators of progress. They began to realize that life, no matter how alien, responded not only to technology, but to understanding, presence, and gentle guidance. The vet never claimed superiority over their science. Instead, they demonstrated that empathy and careful observation could complement advanced methods, creating results that neither alone could achieve. One day, the wolf surprised the human. It approached without hesitation, nudging its nose against the vet's hand and then lying down beside them. It was a bold gesture of trust, signaling that the wolf had accepted their presence as safe and even comforting. The human remained still, speaking softly, allowing the wolf to set the pace. This moment marked a turning point. The wolf was ready to engage more actively in its own care, an essential step toward reproductive readiness. From that day forward, the vet introduced gentle exercises designed to stimulate the wolf's natural behaviors and reproductive health. These were not forced or unnatural, but carefully planned activities that encouraged movement, balance, and confidence. The wolf was guided to navigate small obstacles, interact with objects, and explore different parts of the enclosure. At first, it was cautious, moving slowly and watching every step. But over time, its confidence grew. The wolf began to move with grace, play with objects that once intimidated it, and occasionally invite the human to participate in its exploration. The bond between the human and the wolf deepened further. The wolf began to respond to verbal cues, following the vet's instructions without fear. Sometimes it would even bring objects to the human, as if seeking approval or sharing a moment of connection. The human knew that these interactions were more than play. They were the building blocks of trust, essential for the next stage of reproductive preparation. Every small gesture of cooperation was a signal that the wolf felt secure enough to allow its body to function naturally, without the stress that had previously blocked reproductive processes. Despite the progress, challenges remained. The wolf's instincts were still cautious, and any sudden movement or loud noise could trigger fear. The vet had to remain vigilant at all times, adjusting routines and responses to avoid setbacks. There were moments of frustration when progress seemed to stall, or when the wolf would retreat into isolation. But the human remained patient, knowing that setbacks were part of the process. Each day brought small victories, and over time, those small victories compounded into meaningful change. The alien caretakers began to assist more actively, following the human's guidance and observing how the wolf responded to gentle care. They provided support, but the human led each interaction, allowing the wolf to maintain control over its environment. Slowly, the aliens began to understand that the wolf's transformation was not just a result of medicine or technology, but of trust, empathy, and human intuition. They recorded every step, not just to study the wolf, but to learn a new way of understanding living beings. One evening, as the twin moons of the alien colony cast soft light across the enclosure, the wolf lay beside the human, breathing calmly. The vet gently ran a hand along its side, feeling the rhythm of its heartbeat, the warmth of its body, and the subtle rise and fall of its chest. It was a peaceful moment, a rare pause in a life that had previously been dominated by fear and stress. The human reflected on how far the wolf had come, realizing that the foundation of all progress had been the patient, consistent effort to build trust and connection. With each passing day, the wolf became more comfortable with the idea of interaction and care. It allowed the human to perform health checks, examine its body, and monitor vital signs without resistance. This readiness was crucial for the next phase, preparing the wolf for reproduction. The human knew that the wolf's body was capable of life, but without emotional readiness, no method, no matter how advanced, could succeed. The bond that had formed was now the bridge to possibility, the key that could unlock a future previously declared impossible. The vet also began planning for the eventual introduction of reproductive stimuli. They studied the wolf's patterns, noting times of calm, periods of activity, and subtle behavioral signals that could indicate readiness. These observations were carefully recorded and analyzed, combining the human's intuition with the alien's precise instruments. Together, they began to craft a plan that respected the wolf's needs, its space, and its unique biology. The human's approach remained gentle, patient, and centered on the wolf's comfort at every step. By the end of this period, the wolf had transformed remarkably. From a creature once feared, isolated, and declared sterile, it had become responsive, curious, and increasingly confident. Its body was healthy, its mind more relaxed, and its trust in the human secure enough to consider the next stage of reproduction. The aliens, once skeptical, now watched in awe, realizing that the human's patient, empathetic methods had achieved something they could not. The human vet understood that the journey was far from over. The wolf was ready for the next step, but the final challenge guiding it through the process of reproduction required the same patience, care, and understanding that had brought them this far. The story of the wolf was no longer just about biology. It was about trust, empathy, and the power of human connection to change lives. And as the twin moons continued to cast gentle light across the alien colony, the vet prepared quietly, knowing that the most incredible moment of this journey was still to come, the moment when life would begin anew. The day had finally come. After weeks of careful preparation, patient observation, and gentle guidance, the wolf's body showed clear signs of readiness. The human vet had monitored every detail: heart rate, muscle tone, diet, and even subtle behavioral cues that indicated the wolf's emotional and physical state. It was a delicate moment, one that required not just skill, but patience and calm. The wolf, once feared and declared sterile, was now on the verge of bringing new life into the galaxy. The alien caretakers watched with a mix of anxiety and awe. Their instruments could measure every aspect of the wolf's health, but they had never witnessed this moment before. Even their advanced technology could not replace the human's intuition, the understanding of when to step forward and when to remain quiet, the ability to sense the wolf's readiness and respond with gentle guidance. The vet had earned the trust of the wolf, and now that trust would be the foundation for the miracle that was about to unfold. The morning began quietly. The wolf moved slowly through its enclosure, pausing to rest and observe the surroundings. It was calmer than it had ever been, lying down near the human and nudging their hand in a gesture of reassurance. The vet spoke softly, their words steady and calm, creating a sense of security. Every movement was measured, every step intentional, as the wolf prepared for the physical strain of labor. This was not a moment for rushing or force. It was a moment to honor the wolf's instincts and allow nature to take its course, not as the hours passed. The wolf showed the first clear signs of labor. Its breathing became heavier, muscles tensed and relaxed rhythmically, and subtle vocalizations indicated discomfort but not distress. The human remained close, observing and ready to assist, yet careful not to interfere unless absolutely necessary. The wolf's body knew what to do, but it was the human's role to guide and support, to create an environment where the wolf could feel safe and confident enough to bring forth life. The aliens were tense, their usual precision and control useless in the face of natural birth. They had never anticipated such a complex and unpredictable process. Machines could monitor, predict, and even intervene in theory, but none of it could replace the delicate timing and intuition required to assist a living creature in labor. The human's presence was the crucial difference. Calm, steady, and responsive, they provided reassurance not just through words, but through quiet gestures. A touch here, a soft pat there, never overwhelming, always attentive. Hours passed, and the labor progressed steadily. The wolf's breathing became more rhythmic, its movements purposeful. The human guided gently, adjusting position, offering support without constraint, encouraging the natural process. The alien caretakers watched in awe, learning that patience and empathy could accomplish what even their most advanced technology could not. Each contraction, each subtle shift in posture was met with calm understanding, a silent communication between species that transcended words. Then, the first pup appeared. Tiny, fragile, and wet, it let out a faint cry, a sound that filled the room with wonder. The human quickly assessed its condition, clearing airways and ensuring warmth, while the wolf, exhausted but aware, nuzzled its newborn. The bond between mother and pup was immediate, instinctual, and powerful. The aliens, who had never seen life emerge in such a raw and natural way, were speechless. The human smiled quietly, relieved and amazed at the sight of life finally arriving. After so much patience and care, one pup was soon followed by another, and then another. Each birth was a careful balance of support and observation. The wolf's strength and determination were remarkable, and the human guided without interfering, allowing the mother to take the lead while providing the safety and reassurance she needed. The alien caretakers began to understand that life, even in this advanced colony, could not always be controlled or measured. Some things required respect, intuition, and presence, the very qualities the human had brought from Earth. The wolf, once feared as a voracious and uncontrollable predator, now displayed a side that few had ever witnessed, gentle, protective, and nurturing. Its eyes, alert yet tender, focused on the tiny creatures at its feet. Each pup was examined quickly, but carefully by the human to ensure health and vitality, then returned to the mother's care. The aliens watched silently, realizing that their definition of control and success was incomplete. True success came not from domination or technology alone, but from understanding, patience, and respect for the natural process. As the final pup emerged, the wolf collapsed briefly, exhausted, but triumphant. The human sat beside her, offering gentle support and quiet encouragement, making sure she had everything needed for recovery. The pups, small and wriggling, immediately sought warmth and comfort from their mother. The enclosure, once a space of isolation and fear, had transformed into a scene of life, trust, and connection. Every being in the room, human and alien alike, could feel the significance of the moment. After the birth, the human monitored both mother and pups carefully. Nutrition, warmth, and gentle handling were critical. The wolf responded instinctively, cleaning her pups, guiding them to feed, and protecting them from any perceived threat. The bond was immediate and powerful, a testament to resilience, instinct, and the careful guidance that had allowed the process to succeed. The human took notes, not only for medical purposes, but to record a historic moment in the colony's understanding of life and care. The aliens approached cautiously, wanting to learn without disturbing the scene. They observed how the human moved, how she interacted with the wolf, how every touch, every word, and every movement was intentional. Slowly, they began to adopt aspects of the human's approach in their own care programs, realizing that empathy and patience were just as important as technology in nurturing life. The wolf, once a symbol of their failure, had now become a teacher in its own right. Throughout the day, the wolf settled into her new role as mother. The human remained close, providing support when necessary, but mostly observing and allowing nature to take its course. Each pup fed, slept, and grew stronger, while the mother rested, occasionally lifting her head to glance at the human, a silent acknowledgement of trust and gratitude. The room, filled with alien technology and beings, was quiet except for the soft sounds of breathing, movement, and the occasional cry of a pup-a-simple, pure symphony of life. By evening, the human reflected on what had been accomplished. The wolf, once thought sterile and hopeless, had delivered healthy pups under circumstances that many had believed impossible. The aliens, who had relied solely on technology, had learned a vital lesson, that life requires more than data, and control it requires connection, trust, and understanding. And the human vet, who had traveled across the galaxy to help, realized that this journey had not only saved a species, but had also bridged worlds, showing that empathy could transcend even the greatest distances and differences. The wolf, exhausted but content, lay surrounded by her pups. The human gently checked each one, ensuring warmth, hydration, and strength. The pups moved instinctively toward their mother, guided by a bond older than any technology. The human allowed herself a quiet moment of satisfaction, knowing that weeks of patience, care, and trust building had led to this miracle. Life had been restored, and in the process, lessons had been learned that would influence the colony for generations. As night fell over the alien colony, the enclosure glowed softly with light. The wolf rested, her pups nestled against her, and the human sat nearby, marveling at the beauty of life. What had once been a story of fear, failure, and hopelessness had transformed into one of trust, patience, and triumph. The journey had been long, challenging, and unpredictable, but the results were extraordinary. The wolf had proven that with understanding and care, even the most difficult situations could be overcome in those quiet hours. The human understood something fundamental. Life is fragile, yet resilient. It responds not just to science and technology, but to kindness, patience, and trust. The wolf, her pups, and the colony had all been changed by the simple presence of someone willing to care, to listen, and to act with empathy. The future now held hope not just for the wolf, but for the lessons this story would leave behind. By the end of part 4, the wolf had completed her transformation. From a creature once feared and considered sterile, she was now a mother, nurturing a new generation under the guidance of a human who had shown that empathy could achieve what technology alone never could. The colony would never forget this. Die the day when life triumphed through patience, care, and the power of connection across worlds. The days after the birth were a delicate balance of care, observation, and quiet celebration. The wolf, now a mother, was adjusting to her new role with surprising grace. Her pups were small, fragile, and utterly dependent, yet she moved with confidence, guiding them, nudging them to feed, and protecting them from anything that might frighten them. The human vet stayed close, not to interfere, but to provide support, reassurance, and guidance whenever needed. Every movement, every touch, every soft word helped reinforce the trust that had been painstakingly built over the weeks. The alien caretakers watched in awe. They had expected the human to manage the birth, but what they did not anticipate was the bond that had formed between species. The wolf now seemed to trust the human implicitly, a trust that allowed the vet to assist subtly, ensuring both mother and pups were healthy and comfortable. The aliens began to take notes, carefully observing every detail, realizing that empathy and patience were as crucial as technology when it came to life. Feeding the pups became the first priority. The wolf instinctively knew how to nurture them, but the human assisted when needed, gently ensuring each pup received enough nutrition. The tiny creatures squirmed and nuzzled, their soft cries filling the air with life. The wolf responded to every sound, every movement, attending to her young with a combination of strength and gentleness that amazed everyone. It was a moment of pure wonder, a demonstration of how instinct, trust, and care could come together to create life and nurture it successfully. The human also began observing behavioral patterns in the pups, noting the subtle differences in personality, strength, and curiosity. Some were bold, exploring the enclosure immediately, while others clung closely to their mother. The vet carefully monitored them, offering gentle guidance and ensuring they were safe without interfering with the natural bond. Each pup responded differently, and every response provided new insight into how life on this alien world could thrive when approached with patience and understanding. The wolf herself continued to grow in confidence and care. She patrolled the enclosure, her massive body moving with purpose and alertness, but always returning to her pups to ensure their safety. Occasionally, she would lift her head and glance at the human, a subtle gesture of recognition and perhaps gratitude. The human remained quiet, observing and recording, knowing that these small signals were significant. Trust had been established, and with it, life could flourish in a way the aliens had never experienced. As the days turned into weeks, the pups grew stronger. They learned to navigate their environment, play with objects, and respond to their mother's guidance. The human continued to provide support, creating enrichment opportunities that stimulated learning and movement without causing stress. It was a careful balance of observation, intervention, and respect for the wolf's natural instincts. Each small success, whether a pup standing on its own, attempting to explore, or feeding successfully, was celebrated quietly, but with immense satisfaction. The alien caretakers began to adopt the humans' methods in their own practices. They had relied for centuries on technology to control and monitor life, but they had never realized the importance of patience, empathy, and human intuition. Watching the wolf mother, her pups under the humans' guidance taught them that life required understanding as much as precision. They began applying similar methods with other creatures, seeing remarkable improvements. The human had not only saved the wolf and her pups, but had also introduced a new way of thinking about care and life. One afternoon, the human observed the wolf interacting with her pups in a moment of unexpected tenderness. The pups nuzzled against her, exploring, learning, and growing, while she guided them patiently, correcting mistakes and encouraging confidence. The wolf's eyes, sharp and intelligent, held a soft focus, a clarity of purpose that came from her new role as mother. The human felt a sense of profound satisfaction, knowing that weeks of patient effort had led to this beautiful transformation. Beyond the immediate care, the vet also worked on socialization and environmental enrichment. The pups were encouraged to explore, climb, and interact with each other, developing coordination, confidence, and social skills. The wolf observed carefully, guiding but not controlling, allowing her offspring to learn through experience. The human provided guidance when necessary, subtly shaping the environment to ensure safety and promote growth. It was a delicate dance of freedom and protection, and it required constant observation and adaptability. The bond between the wolf and the human had reached a remarkable level. The wolf would allow gentle handling of her pups, responding to the human's presence without fear or aggression. Occasionally, she would bring a pup to the vet, nudging it toward guidance or assistance, a clear signal that trust had been fully established. The human responded calmly, reinforcing the bond without imposing control. This mutual respect allowed both mother and pups to thrive in a controlled yet natural environment, and it became a model for the alien caretakers to follow. One day, the human noticed a subtle but important change in the wolf. Her posture was lighter, her movements more fluid, and her attention to her pups seemed more relaxed. It was a sign that she was fully comfortable in her new role, and that her initial stress and fear had been replaced by confidence and instinctual understanding. The human smiled quietly, recognizing that the wolf's transformation was complete, in both body and spirit. Trust had become the foundation not only for life, but for flourishing life. As the weeks continued, the pups grew rapidly. Their strength, curiosity, and intelligence became evident, and they began exploring beyond their mother's immediate reach. The wolf watched closely, ready to intervene if necessary, but allowing independence to develop. The human supported this growth, designing challenges and enrichment opportunities that encouraged learning without stress. The alien caretakers observed closely, recording every interaction and outcome, realizing that the human's patient, empathetic approach could revolutionize their understanding of nurturing life. The wolf's relationship with the human remained special. Even after the pups were more independent, she would seek the vet's presence, a quiet acknowledgement of the trust and guidance that had shaped her new life. The human continued to provide subtle support, always respecting boundaries, always prioritizing comfort and security. The story of the wolf, her pups, and the human became an enduring example of what could be achieved through empathy, patience, and understanding across species and even worlds. By the end of this period, the wolf and her pups were thriving. The enclosure, once a place of isolation and fear, had transformed into a space of life, learning, and trust. The human had not only assisted in birth and survival, but had guided a transformation that went beyond biology. The aliens, witnessing this change, had learned a new lesson. Even the most advanced technology could not replace the need for understanding, patience, and empathy in caring for living beings. The human reflected on the journey. What had started as a mission to assist an alien wolf declared sterile had become something much more profound. Trust had been built, life had been restored, and lessons had been learned that would last across generations. The wolf, once feared and misunderstood, was now a nurturing mother, guiding her pups with intelligence, care, and instinct. The human's presence had been the bridge between fear and trust, hopelessness and life, misunderstanding and connection. The alien caretakers began sharing the lessons widely. They integrated the human's methods into their own practices, applying empathy and patient observation to other creatures under their care. The story of the wolf and her pups became a symbol of transformation, a demonstration of how patience, care, and understanding could overcome challenges that even advanced technology could not solve. The human had not just helped the wolf. They had changed a colony's perspective on life itself. In quiet moments, the human would sit beside the wolf and her pups, watching them play, feed, and explore. There was a sense of peace, accomplishment, and deep satisfaction. The wolf's eyes would meet the human's occasionally, a silent connection that spoke of trust, understanding, and respect. It was a reminder that life, no matter how alien, responded to patience, care, and empathy in ways that were simple yet extraordinary. The story concluded not with dramatic fanfare, but with quiet, enduring triumph. The wolf, once feared and declared hopeless, had become a mother. Her pups thrived under her guidance, supported subtly and carefully by a human who had traveled across the galaxy to help. The aliens had learned that technology alone could not solve every problem, that understanding and empathy were as vital as science. And the human had witnessed the profound impact that patience, trust, and care could have on life. No matter how different it might seem got by the end of this chapter, life had not just been saved, it had been nurtured, understood, and celebrated. The wolf's journey from fear and isolation to trust and motherhood was complete, and the human's role had become a lasting legacy of compassion, teaching, and connection. Across worlds, a simple lesson had been learned, that even in the most challenging circumstances, life could thrive when approached with patience, care, and understanding.